Welcome back, everyone, and today we'll be doing a Real Bout Fail Fury series overview. One of the newest things is I was able to finally snag a video capture card, so the video will be much cleaner, sharper, as it won't be just a video recording of the projection screen wall. So we'll be starting off with Real Bout Fail Fury, then moving on towards to Real Bout Fail Fury Special, and then last but not least for this series, Real Bout Fail Fury 2. And then in the next video next weekend, we'll have Garo Mark of the Wolves. So Real Bout Fail Fury we'll be starting off with is basically a continuation of Fail Fury 3's ideas brought on to kind of the next level. As I mentioned in the last video, Fatal Fury 3 really was the genesis of kind of that turnaround or that turn that Fatal Fury was making into the Real Bout series, which was definitely one of my preferences. The control and gameplay is a lot tighter. There's definitely some changes, however. For example, instead of 4 attack buttons, which is A, B, C, D, now we're brought on to A, B, C for attacks, and then D is back to line switching. So A is kick, sorry, A is punch, B is kick, C is a kind of nebulous power attack move, which could be punch or kick depending on the character and the move you're trying to pull off. So for example, with Terry, he can still have a weak bare knuckle or a powerful bare knuckle using a power attack C button and the half circle backwards motion. However, his crack shoot that now does not have a more powerful version. You just get the standard weak attack. Desperation moves have also been removed. In its place, basically you build up a P or power meter, which will kind of extend their super standards, the standard to the super, adding a few extra hits and a little bit more of extra damage as well. And of course, as soon as you pull that off, your P gauge is completely gone. Back also are the beautiful backgrounds with the transitions in between each round, whether that be the number of viewers or audience watching the fight, whether that be the time of day, etc. That is back. And one of the pieces that Real Bout did take from the Virtua Fighter series are ring outs. So most of the stages, except for Geese's stage, actually has a ring out once you break down a barrier or a wall. And some of them even have some comedic timings. Like for example, if you knock your opponent out in the subway, they can actually be knocked into the subway, taking them away at the end of the fight. So very cool, kind of little nods. Definitely a fan of SNK's little inside jokes with these. So I'm glad they do have that. Other than that, there are there are 16 returning characters and 3 returning characters from other installments in the Fatal Fury series overall. Kim Kapuan, Billy Kane, and Duck King make a return in Real Bout. Storyline-wise, it continues on to the Real Bout series. This time, Geese was able to acquire the magic tomes that he was trying to get in Fatal Fury 3, with the Twin Guardians actually destroying it. After that taking place, Geese Howard starts off with announcing another King of Fighters tournament, which brings us to the current stage. The current game, I mean. So the gameplay itself has been tightened even further in Fatal Fury 3. The combos are a bit faster, they flow much better than even Fatal Fury 3, and I think speaks well for the Real Bout series moving forward. The timing and the physics are definitely a lot more intuitive. It feels a lot more like the Alpha or Capcom fighter, so I think they made this adjustment as of course the Capcom fighting games were much more popular than the SNK games, especially with the Fatal Fury series. Combined with that, with the faster pacing, the always excellent controls, amazing visuals, and animation, make for just a wonderful game. And again, the Real Bout series onwards, definitely one of my favorite Fatal Fury series games, beyond, of course, Mark of the Wolves being at the top. Now, the sprites are generally about the same. They're kind of the same mix of anime-esque with a little bit of grittiness to them. They're, of course, larger than they were in the original Fatal Fury series. A little bit brighter this time around. The designs overall are still flashier. It's well animated and very smooth. Musically, the compositions are pretty decent. There's a few standouts here and there, but overall, nothing that really, knocked my socks off. A lot of it was kind of redone from other series. There have been other conversions of this to, of course, the Neo Geo CD, which unfortunately still suffered from horrible load times. PlayStation as well, the original PlayStation, and even the Sega Saturn. The Sega Saturn was cut down a little bit, and you can also use the RAM card, the 1 meg version, which, while it did help with the load times, unfortunately did not contain all of the animation frames that the Fatal Fury Real Bout series had. You can, of course, pick this up on the Real Bout Fatal Fury series Battle Archives, which is on PlayStation 4 both digitally, and if you were able to pick it up, Limited Run Games also had it in the standard PS4 case, along with a classic edition as well. As I mentioned, SNK really turned the corner with its focus on the Real Bout series, making it feel and flow a bit more like the Capcom fighters. So combos are a lot flashier, so they're a lot more fun, especially when you're fighting against someone to really pull these off, especially if you're pulling off a desperation move. The damage has been rebalanced. They're not quite as strong or take as much damage as far as when you're fighting against an opponent. So the fights can last a little bit longer. And again, this is definitely the start of a great Real Bout series, and I'm hoping that they'll do a Garo Mark of the Wolves 2 or even a Real Bout Series 4. I would definitely love to see that as well. There are some canned combos in the system, which, once you've learned them, the nice thing is you can bring it over from game to game. And honestly, overall, this series, Real Bout, is definitely better than the original Fatal Fury series. The AI isn't quite as cheap. For example, now jumping in, you can actually block, so the computer doesn't have as much priority as the original games, which for me, definitely was a boon, because I really, really hated that. So that said, again, real great Real Bout Fatal Fury Series 1. Next up will be Real Bout Special. Alright, this brings me to another of my favorite Real Bout Fatal Fury games, Real Bout Fatal Fury Special. And if you're a collector, especially if you're trying to collect the AES games, I can always recommend the Japanese carts. They're a bit cheaper than the American versions because they produced more of them. And even then, this game did cost a little bit more, almost double than what I had originally paid for Real Bout Fatal Fury. I was able to get Real Bout Fatal Fury about 3 years ago, almost 4 years ago now, fully complete with the box, manual, etc., even the baggie and the AES cartridge, for about $80 shipped. Whereas Real Bout Fatal Fury Special was closer to about $185. And the reason why is, for most folks that don't know, or just kind of outside looking in, or just know a little about the series, they assume that this was just a really minor tweak, like Street Fighter 2 going to Championship Edition, or in the SNK terms, Fatal Fury 2 going to Fatal Fury Special. Fatal Fury Special is actually, I think, a big improvement over Fatal Fury 2, and Real Bout Fatal Fury Special, I think, makes that same leap over Real Bout Fatal Fury. There's definitely plenty of additions, a ton of improvements, enough to, I would say that this is definitely, could have easily been Real Bout Fatal Fury 2. It's got another, kind of overhaul visually. The characters are even more redrawn. There's also, for most of the characters, not all of them, the style is definitely brighter. It's more attractive. It catches the eye. They, of course, still animate very well. There's also some new backgrounds, more interaction as well. Especially since the backgrounds in Real Bout Fatal Fury, you only had 5 to choose from, or 5 that was assigned to you. There's definitely quite a few more arenas to really fight in. It's definitely still quality. They do, of course, some of the stages still have the kind of wall and ring out, so that's perfect. A lot of the characters have their own custom either greetings or winning outros in the game. Again, love the little SNK tongue-in-cheek nods, or to the both the characters and then the fans themselves. There's definitely quite a few different familiar faces that coming back from the previous Fatal Fury installments that you can even spot in the background. The music itself is even, for the most part, new. There's definitely a few of them that sound similar, but somewhat redone compared to Real Bout Fatal Fury. Like for example, Terry does get a more of an arranged music from Fatal Fury 2. Blue Mary still gets the jazzy saxophone. That's kind of she's been known for, especially if you're playing the King of Fighters series. That music comes on when she's fighting. The announcer is very exuberant. Definitely, I think very similar to the Street Fighter Alpha series. I think that's kind of where they snagged it a bit from. The selection for the characters are even larger, of course. So they do add Tung Fu Yu, Krauser's in this, Cheng Shenzan, and Loris Blood, of course, are back. There's now a total of about 20 characters in total you can choose. Geese Howard is a secret boss character, and you can actually reach him. And unfortunately, I think the conditions to reach him are pretty tough. And I know I definitely haven't been able to do it. This is more of just kind of a side, I don't want to say glitch or hidden character, but definitely a hidden character because in the storyline, he's technically dead from the last game series. There's also, I heard, a few hidden EX versions of at least 4 of the characters in the game as well. So could technically bring the total up to about 24. As far as gameplay, there haven't really been that many changes. The game itself was already, quite amazing, going from Fatal Fury 2 to Real Bout Fatal Fury Special. So I think they just tweaked a couple other things, tightened up even more of the gameplay. So that part, hard to really argue against. The gameplay, as you can see, is on point completely. There's also, some milder tweaks or smaller tweaks in the game that, especially when it comes to combos, it's a little bit more forgiving, a little easier to chain your combos together. The move between planes, as I mentioned, is changed back to the D button, so you only really have 3 attack buttons, so that does help with going back and forth and moving around in a 3D space. It's still, the overall speed, fluidity of animation, and the tight control really helps to easily put this on par with a Street Fighter Alpha 2 in my mind. There have been, of course, other ports of this game, primarily to the Neo Geo CD, which, of course, still suffers from slow load times. Though if the Poly Mega ever does really come out and stops being vaporware, if you do have the Neo Geo CD version, the amazing thing is, once you install it to the either mini SD card or SSD to the Poly Mega, again, if it releases, load times are pretty much non-existent. They did, of course, have a Saturn version as well, which, again, compatible with the RAM card. And even they released the Real Bout series on PlayStation 2 as part of the Battle Archives Volume 2, which you can pick up for, I believe, for about $30 right now on Amazon as of this date, and it's May 2021. But of course, you can pick it up on PS4 digitally as well. I often get sales, so you can probably pick it up for, I think I picked mine up for about $5.99. The price is normally, I think, $14.99. And if you wanted physical, it might be a little bit, it's unfortunately late now, but Limited Run Games did have a pre-order for a physical version of the Real Bout Fatal Fury Archives, which is, I believe, now in the process of shipping to folks. I'm waiting for my Classic Edition to arrive, I believe, this Friday from Limited Run Games. They even actually included a Game Boy version, which, contained a lot of the same characters and currently a lot of the moves as well. This game is easily very polished before it moves over to Fatal Fury 2 or Real Bout 2, the newcomers. Alright everyone, and last but certainly not least, Real Bout 2, the newcomers, released in 1998. This game, it was amazing. For a great way to end the Real Bout series, at least as of now. I can't believe this many years have already passed. Real Bout Fatal Fury Special to Real Bout 2 didn't really have that many changes. Because I didn't really need it, to be honest. Real Bout Failure Fury Special was very well balanced, so they brought all the entire roster from Real Bout Failure Fury Special back. They did add two new characters. They added Lee Zhang-fei and Rick Stroud. Rick is basically, in my mind, a 2D version of Brian Fury in regards to some of his power moves. It's actually definitely one of my favorite characters, and I'm hoping that they'll actually include him in King of Fighters 15. In its place, they actually added, instead of Rick, they actually added Vanessa, who's a very Rick-like character. And then the later King of Fighters games. Keys, of course, is playable here, which is actually quite surprising, as he of course did in this series. But still, it's quite a fun. He's quite a fun character to play and also to fight against. Can be a bit of a bastard with his counters and his power moves. But otherwise, this title is definitely like a dream match, like King of Fighters 98, non-canonical. Backgrounds mostly new on the most part. Music, not too many changes. Again, since this is a dream match type game, there's really no story at all except for the standard kind of pre-battle conversations, both before and of course the after. As far as the intro, it's a mix of some animation and some CG titling, which, well, definitely very energetic. I don't know. I definitely prefer some of the other intros of the series, especially in Real Bout Failure Fury Special. Seeing Terry knocked down, panting for getting his second win, and then looking up to see who might have caused him to be in this state, and you see it's Krauser. So for me, that was definitely a much more of an impressive intro versus this one. But there's definitely fans of this game as well. As far as gameplay, as I mentioned, the change for the evolution, or should I say transition, from Real Bout Failure Fury Special to Real Bout 2, just unfortunately weren't that many changes because they weren't really needed as much. Gameplay-wise, it is very, very close. Plane switching, of course, is still here and back. Very possible to move from the foreground, background to the main floor. Again, 3 plane stages, no changes there. A lot of fans, this is definitely for a lot of fans in the Real Bout series, this is definitely one of the best. This is a bit more expensive, so if you are trying to get this for the AES, I think you're still looking anywhere between about $650 up to about $900 complete and intact. I remember I picked this up for about $5 quite a few years ago, and even then, I got rid of it 2 years ago. I got about $7 for it, so even I think now it's probably still have gone up. The controls, the gameplay, the animation, tight, smooth, rarely any hiccups. The controls are very, very, I would say, easily on par with Alpha 2 and Alpha 3 for Street Fighter. If you're a Capcom fan, you can easily get into the pace of the Real Bout series. Of course, Real Bout 2 being the pinnacle before it changes over to Garo Mark of the Wolves. And then the nice part is this game is actually pretty tough to find physically. It is included in the Real Bout Battle Archives. That's on PS4, also on PS2 as well. There is a Neo Geo Pocket version which has some of the characters, which is basically Fatal Fury First Contact. It's also, of course, on PS2, and of course now digitally available on the Xbox through ACA, Switch, which you're seeing here through the eShop from ACA. So, definitely glad that a lot more people has a chance to really kind of play this game and get used to, and get exposed to, what a tight, well-made fighting game should be like. The backgrounds in this game are even more impressive. I remember seeing the cherry blossom trees with the little kind of side animation, as you can see here. I remember, thinking, these are the type of background stages I want to see in a fighting game. This was also, of course, during the time that Alpha 2 and Alpha 3 was out, and I honestly feel that Alpha 2 and Alpha 3 were some of the best stages in fighting games, kind of that time frame. Third Strike had maybe one or two nice ones, but honestly, I think the Alpha series, as far as fighting game stages, the Real Bout stages, at least as far as Real Bout Special and Real Bout 2 were some of my favorite fighting game stages ever. As you can see here, as I mentioned, the gameplay is fast and furious. Um, Definitely, taking the advantage of the extra speed and tightness. And the amazing part, even if you're watching through the series from that I've just recorded and put up on YouTube, you can see the evolution in the character animation, the evolution in the character voices, the fidelity in the music, the increase in the definition, and again the fidelity in the background itself, and even still including the transitions. And it continues to still amaze me as an adult, how much SNK or SNK Playmore was able to really wring out of their MVS or AES hardware. To think this is all on the same hardware that released in 1989 for both arcade, of course, and home market, whereas Capcom had to go up to two different CPS boards just to get to their Alpha series from CPS 1 and CPS 2. But have to definitely give major kudos to SNK and the programming, the design teams, as they're able to wring out as much as they could, and they'll even eke out just a bit more when it comes to two of the later titles, King of Fighters 2003, where you can actually have tag battle and can actually tag and switch out during the gameplay, or Garou Mark of the Wolves when it comes to the animation, easily on par with CPS3 games that Capcom had, again, on a brand new CPS3 platform, whereas SNK is doing this all on the same original platform. And of course, Art of Fighting 3, which has tons and tons of frames of animation. So, again, notwithstanding SNK, the programmers, the artists, the developers, just years, light years beyond, and definitely has kept me a lifelong SNK Neo Geo fan. I'm glad to have this on the Switch. Physically, I'll have it soon. I'm waiting for my version from Limited Run Games to arrive for PS4, even though I do have it digitally for PS4 as well, since it did go on sale for about $5.99 or so. And of course, have it for the Neo Geo MVSX unit, which was released by Unico this past December. So, again, huge fan. This brings me back, to both arcade days with my friends, going to quarters, going to kicks here in Seattle, or even playing it at my friend Andy's house. I remember playing many rounds of Real Bout and, of course, getting my butt kicked. And he was just amazing at this and at Alpha 2. But still just having a blast, talking crap, playing, getting used to each other, as far as, different tendencies, trying to do the read. It definitely brings back a smile to my face and makes me happy to be able to have this at home. And while, especially with the pandemic currently, we're unable to get together as well, I think one of the first things once we've got herd immunity, or at least more of my friends have their COVID shots, is to have another fighting game night, maybe even a fighting game tournament. It's been due. But I do want to thank everyone for watching the series. The next up, I'll either be doing Garou Mark of the Wolves just to kind of wrap up the Fatal Fury series, or I may switch off and maybe start with Art of Fighting, maybe even switch over and do a Capcom. I haven't quite decided what to do for my next video, but I'm thinking it'll probably be Garou Mark of the Wolves for our next vid. So again, everyone, thanks for watching. Much appreciated.